Hey guys, John Rettinger here at the review for you of the Samsung Impression for AT&T Wireless. This phone will run you, at least as of this filming, $199 after a $50 mail-in rebate and the obligatory 2-year contract. So before I get into my review, let me give you some pros and cons of the device. First, let's go over the pros, and the biggest pro of the Samsung Impression is its gorgeous 3.2-inch AMOLED display. And that's just fancy talk for a really gorgeous, low-power, non-backlight display. And really does work as advertised. It's bright, it's vibrant, and really just sips power. Because it doesn't use a backlight, you really can get that full backlit effect without the unfortunate battery drain that usually comes with it. It's definitely something to keep in mind. This phone also features a full on-screen QWERTY keyboard, as well as a full slide-out QWERTY keyboard, which makes text input very nice and easy. It also has a built-in proximity sensor, so when you hold it up to your head, it'll sense that it's up to your head, and you won't dial random people, you won't call an ex-girlfriend or whatever. You're not going to do anything when it's up to your face. It also has a very responsive accelerometer, so you can type or view web pages in landscape mode. And speaking of web pages, it also has a relatively rudimentary HTML browser. You can view pages in HTML format, but there's a lot of finger scrolling through it. And as you're finger scrolling, you will be using a resistive touchscreen, meaning it makes its point of contact using 2 layers of film. So when you push down on that, it registers where the contact's coming from, and that's how it registers a touch, as opposed to a capacitive touchscreen like those found on the iPhone or the T-Mobile G1. For comparison purposes, most Windows Mobile touchscreen phones, actually all Windows Mobile touchscreen phones, use resistive, so you can get a sense of what those look like if you've ever played with a Windows Mobile phone. I'm not the biggest fan of resistive, but it does actually work relatively well on this device. This uses a TouchWiz interface that I've reviewed a few times with other Samsung devices. Uses a row of widgets along the side. I'll unlock the phone and show you what that looks like. Uses a row of widgets across the side that you can customize and drag onto the home screen. It actually is a very nice interface, and as you're touching these widgets and dragging them along, you're taking advantage of haptic feedback, meaning it has a little bit of vibration as you're touching different buttons. Generally, I find haptic feedback to be quite annoying. In the case of the Samsung and these TouchWiz devices, I actually find it to be a benefit. It really enhances the experience. You really know that you've pushed something, as opposed to just touching a screen and waiting to see what happens. So this is a phone, and as a phone, first and foremost, it has to make good phone calls. I'm happy to report that it certainly does that in spades. Reception on my end was fantastic, and so was call quality. On the other ends, people reported no white noise, no buzzing. They could hardly tell I was on a cell phone. So kudos to Samsung and AT&T for that. Obviously, your signal strength is going to vary where you're at. Where I am, I get full bars of 3G. Even when it dropped down to Edge on occasion, reception was still very strong. Something to keep in mind. And as I just said, this is a full 3G enabled device, as well as quad-band Edge for global roaming. Not so bad. Battery life on this really is strong. It doesn't have the biggest battery, but the display, which generally is a big battery drain, isn't the case anymore. So I was able to get 2 days piece of cake. Probably could have gone 3 days, but I charged it with typical use. An hour or 2 of talk time, some text messaging. I even sent an email. I looked at some web pages. Nothing terribly intensive, but just general usage. You won't have any trouble with that. The keyboard on the device, the actual physical keyboard rather, is actually very nice and easy to use. It does have a lot of tactile feedback, and you can push the buttons and you really know that you've pushed something. As with most slide-out keyboards, an unfortunate side effect is the top row of keys are generally hard to access with your fingers because you're always hitting the top. It's not bad, but it is something to keep in mind. I was able to get used to this keyboard very, very, very quickly, and I think you will too. It also, as I mentioned earlier, has an on-screen keyboard, and I've been a big fan of the Samsung on-screen keyboards. I think they're probably third best to the iPhone and the G1s, and that's actually a really big compliment because I've been a fan of the iPhone and the G1's on-screen keyboard. I'm speaking about the cupcake build, by the way, of the G1, something I had a chance to play around with, fortunately. And as it comes out, you guys will see it's fantastic. And the Samsung interface, really takes advantage of that and does a great job with it. It's definitely something to keep in mind. Now, some of the cons of the device. This is going to run you $199, and that $199 price point is exactly the same as an 8GB iPhone. So I'm not really sure who Samsung is targeting with this. It's not a smartphone per se, although you do get some smartphone-esque features. It kind of straddles the line. You get a calendar where you can add calendar reminders and set alerts and such. You get an email client, but it's Java-based, so you're not going to get HTML email. You're not going to get set reminders. You have to open the application, open the email, do a send and receive, and then wait, and then close it back up again. And if you want to check another email, after you've exited, you have to go back into the email application, wait for it to load up, and then go. You can't easily sync with your Outlook or Entourage. You're not going to be able to hook up to an Exchange server. So you really don't get the full smartphone features that you will get with a BlackBerry, an iPhone, a Symbian, or other smartphone OSs like Windows Mobile. But you do get some of those sort of smartphone features. But at the same price point as the iPhone, I'd be hard-pressed to find someone who would pick this up instead of the iPhone. If, say, the $30 unlimited data plan for the iPhone is a problem for you, then something like this would be great. Or if you're just looking for a feature phone, you don't really care about full internet, you don't really care about the email, you just want something that looks good, that you can text on, and that you can fit in your pocket, then the Impression probably is for you. And it is a relative value at $199, even though there are other phones sort of at that price point. So one of the other big gripes I have with the device, and this is actually a really big negative, is the lock button. To unlock the phone, you have to hold this button on the side, and it is so far inlaid that it's extremely hard to push. I'm going to zoom in and show you guys what that looks like here, so you can get a sense of kind of how difficult it actually is. So, zoom in on my big face. Right there, you've got that unlock button. You have to really kind of push it in, almost with your fingernail, to hold it in. As I'm doing it right now, I'm still not activating it. There we go. On the second try, I finally got it to work. So it's definitely something to keep in mind, and it didn't take a lot of getting used to. It took me quite a little bit to really get a chance to use it correctly, and even then I still wasn't that accurate with it. So it definitely is a little bit of a negative. Overall, I came away very impressed with the phone. While I'm not necessarily fair to compare it with other devices in AT&T's lineup, on its own merits, it does stand very strong. It's got a great keyboard, it's got a decent internet browser, you can do everything that you want to do. MMS, take advantage of the 3-megapixel camera on the back, you can record video, it's got a rudimentary MP3 player, it can play YouTube videos, so it does do a lot of very cool things that are quickly becoming essential. So definitely something that you might want to look at as you're walking into your local AT&T store. Anyway guys, if I have to give this a phone kind of a 1 to 5 scale, I give it a really solid 3 3/4. It's just kind of missing out on a few key features, and that button on the side is a big negative. But if you have small fingers, then it won't be a concern for you. Guys, for exclusive content, be sure to follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/John4Lakers, and I will see you guys in the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.